on.
We just mentioned like 5 minutes before everyone was
We
entering the room.
we literally
Let's start the
commented,
recording.
yeah.
So thanks for that note. Anyway, so before we're kicking off, so let me share what we're gonna run through. So first we're gonna run with some basics. What is the actual problem? Some theoretical about how we think AI agent quality needs to be defined, and a short demo on how PMs are using language in combination with Cloud Code at this moment. And that's about it. Maybe Rogeri, you want to share a few words on your perspective?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, like Manuk said, right? This has been for many years now the core, the number one problem that we see and that we're tackling with language. So when you're building agents, and despite being a very technical challenge and having this new professional of the AI engineer building it, right? More than ever before, they need to collaborate with the domain expert, because if you're an AI engineer building for the health space, for the finance space, you're not necessarily a lawyer or a doctor, a medical doctor, right? So how can we solve for this collaboration? And since the latest advancements of Cloud Code, this unlocked a whole new side of collaboration, which we would like to present today. And like Manuk says, and I like to repeat it here, that we're doing these webinars now more often, almost every other week. And every week there's a new thing popping up in AI, right? So there's always very good content to share that we see going around with all the customers that we help with. And then we're going to try today to bring you some use cases on how have people doing their evals with language, but also with this new tooling like operating via their agents. Let's go.
Absolutely. So, I mean, let's start with it, right? Why AI quality efforts fails, and that's from the beginning on. You have your logs, you have your observability, but then what happens next, and what do we see failing with most organizations before they're hitting language, basically? So first of all is tested manually, right? As in, no reproducible process. You run a few tests, you get your first 50 beta users in place to test your AI agents, and then discover it works, it doesn't work, or you let it test internally. But it's quite a manual process. And as most organizations, they want to move faster than their competitors. They need better solutions in place, or at least faster solutions in place, to get that up to speed and to make sure that their competitive advantage they will be keeping, and that testing is more automated than we've been seeing so far. And that's the reason why it's also tested manually, or the connection with that is that there's not on forehand a defined process within these teams. So we see that there aren't really goals or metrics defined yet. Maybe a few evals has been set up, but it's perhaps just the engineering team that is involved there. Like Rogeri already mentioned, is that it's the developer. Mostly, they're not the legal expert, they're not the financial expert, etc. And lastly, what we've seen so far is that engineers want to hand it over to domain experts, but then they're locked out of the system. So just our tool, or looking into the developer tool, or living in Google Sheets. That's the problems we're mostly seeing and facing. Maybe Rogeri, to you, which of these four do you see as a real blocker in most organizations now?
Yeah, I think they're all kind of connected, right? Like you said, because you don't have, and people come to us. One of the first questions we ask when they're so excited showing their agents, right, that it's going to production, and then we ask, okay, how are you evaluating that? How do you know that this is good? And they reply kind of embarrassed on like, yeah, I mean, we're working on that. We kind of tested it ourselves, but we still didn't have time to build the evals and so on. And what a lot of time happens is that they actually did test it, but very manually, right? Doing all this, or with a beta test group. And that's just the state of industry right now. Most of the cases, there's still a lot of vibe feeling going on. And I think the number one point here is not having it defined. So the second block there. Because if you don't have what quality means for your agent, then you cannot automate it and you cannot optimize it. So you're stuck in this loop of testing manually because it's actually a hard problem, right? It's hard to for something so open as, let's say, I don't know, a legal co-pilot agent. What does it mean for that to be good? Sometimes it's a tough job to define it, but it
Good
must be
question.
done. Yeah. Oh yeah. All right. So I'll let you continue.
No, go ahead. Yeah, I think that's exactly the question, right? What does it mean to be? What does a good agent mean, or what does good mean for an agent like that? Um, and in most teams, like you said, are skipping that question entirely. And the fun fact is, what you just said is that I just got a message on email, and that person said, "Hey Manouk, I'm finally launching everything from the team, from agents to the first beta users to production, and now I finally see all your LinkedIn messages are clicking. As in, now I see what language is actually building, and where what you are helping people with, or at least engineering teams with, and that is indeed defining what good means, defining what scenarios should be tested, etc. What is a side note? So what does that good mean for your agent, right? Does it finish the job with the right human resources? That are the outputs factually correct in the domain you're presenting in, like the legal domain? Tone and persona, does it has the brand voice each time over and over again? Yeah, maybe from your perspective, Roger, how do you see this in practice, and what practical examples can we actually share about this?
Yeah. So how I see in practice is that this definition has many stages, right? So there is an initial stage, and then it's good to do a brainstorming, kind of like a design session of the agent. And then you ask some questions like this, including we bring some cases here, a lot of companies that develop agents for other companies. And these definitions that you just show here is, yeah, exactly. Defining the task, the persona, success is part of their initial collaboration, right? So you talk to the PM or you talk to the domain expert, or somebody's trying to automate something, right? And then you try to extract these initial things on what is it that you're automating, what is it that success looks like, and let's define some scenarios even. Let's define some tasks and some situations for the task and the personas, right? The types of variations that could be there. And what does it mean to be success in this case? And what does it mean to be success in that case? Not both the final success and the path to it. So an initial definition already helps a lot. However, as anyone that already built an agent will realize, it's crazy hard for you to for upfront find out everything that can go wrong and all the directions that will go, especially what people will ask, right? Or what documents are missing or what tools are missing. So there is a second part of the process, which is just continuously observing it, which starts from development. So continuously even go from yourself, right? Your own tasks, but also from beta users. And then finally, of course, in production. But part of these definitions of what quality means, you will find out on the first month or the first months. And you will do, I think we'll get there in presentation as well, but one of the good methods is doing just the error failure modes, right? So you look at all those past examples that happen with your beta group, for example, and then you can map some error modes. You start seeing patterns on it, and then those patterns become what it means to be quality. And I think I remember one thing that I wanted to mention as well, Manuk, then I don't know if I'm getting ahead of myself, is that another thing that is very important to look at is really the final end goal of the agent and working backwards. So we're in a business, right, generally, and then the goal is generally ROI. So you have an agent because it needs to bring returns, maybe more sales, maybe time saved, and that's the final goal. How can you work backwards from there? So what does it mean for this agent to bring ROI? And sometimes you can directly measure. If you can, that's perfect. For example, a customer support agent, it should reduce the amount of times that an agent has to delegate for a human to take over, right? Okay, we have this metric now. How can we improve this metric? You can find, for example, that sometimes the agent misunderstands what the user says at the phone. So another metric is how many times did the user have to correct the agent? And that's another proxy metric that we can improve to improve our final metric, and so on. And you keep working backwards from there. Maybe a document missing is something that would help it understand the user, that would help it not have to delegate to a human. So you see how that goes. If you have those defined, written in paper, then it allows you to now start automating this process and start and having a metric to, or a set of metrics and tests and scenarios to look for up for, and then come back to what Manuk was saying, to go away from just manual tests and start automating your process.
Right. Yeah. So you start actually at the final, maybe at third year on quality, not even, but the final ROI. But then also look at, okay, what does a good response mean? That's more on the quality aspect, right? Or what can absolutely not happen? What can an agent absolutely not say? Can it not say something which is legally not allowed to say? Or can it not touch the CRM system or the different tools, right, before it touches the billing system? And I think that we started on evals, but that makes such a big difference when we're speaking about more agentic systems, right? Multi-turn conversations, and the current evals, as we know them today, they're only looking at the outputs. But if we're talking more about agentic systems, then we have those tool callings, and we need to make sure that those are called at the right time, at the right moment. And you really want to test all those different tool calls, and the behavior and so on are tested well.
Yeah, so this framework that we have here, right? Define the task, specify the persona, and define success goals. Those can translate directly to scenarios when you have an agentic system. So when you define the task, you can identify the explicit out of the scope request. So this shouldn't happen, for example. And you can also even take note of the path a little bit, right? So like, I expected to use this API or this tool, or it can go in these 2 or 3 directions. That's fine, as long as that's the goal. It's good to capture all that, because more and more now we are, in the AI age. So an AI can later help you translate that super easily into the actual tests.
Yeah, and I think it's almost a loop, right? We're now talking about before production, as in define the task, specify the persona, and define the success signals. But the moment you're gonna hit that production, things are gonna happen. You either want to add a new AI feature to your product, or things are changing in your pipeline. And let's say a product manager decides to add a new piece of agent into the agentic workflow. You want to fully test the same scenarios with that new situation again. So that's the entire loop. So after you went live, you want to add something, and you're going to pre-test the same scenarios, or maybe even adding more scenarios towards it. And then the good thing about it, and that's going back to the monitoring part, is that you can also add the current traces in production. So the current messages, the current users asking questions, can use that data to then run new scenarios. So PMs or domain experts are flagging certain inputs and outputs, so messages happening from users, and selecting them as an input for new scenario tests in the system. So I think we're talking a lot of theory right now, but I believe we also have some good practical cases. So how does that work in practice? How do PMs collaborate with engineers? What tools do they use? But also, what are the outcomes of it? Did it indeed save them time, or not yet, maybe? So that's why we're sharing 2 different use cases today, which we can, and this is a very interesting one, by the way, because we actually noticed after they started using Language, how they're actually using us in combination with their many domain experts in the organization.
Yeah, exactly. So very interesting use case that they built using scenarios. So they are implementing the agents for several customers, right? And then they have the implementation leads working there with their customers to get all these requirements and write those tests. And what Vinny has done using our latest releases from MCP and skills with Language is that they managed to bridge the gap really well from non-technical people to also write those scenarios right where they already live, which is Slack, right? So what they did was creating a Slack channel where where any one of the implementation lead or customer manager or the account manager, they can get any request from the customer, any problems that happen, and they can describe it right there on Slack. And together with that, they did an integration also with the tracings that are captured from LangWatch. So then as soon as we receive a new request at Slack, the Slack bot pulls both the context from their application and the context from LangWatch, what really happened in production, and can understand where the problem arrived from. And then it generates a scenario. So then with this scenario, it can reproduce the problem with their agent in development and leave it ready for the technical team to just pick it up. So now you know there is a problem, you know there is a way to reproduce it. Yes, thank you. A reproducible issue. Yeah, that's what I meant. Which then the engineers can just pick up and iterate over, right? And then when it's done, you also have the proof that it's done. And their implementation leads never needed to leave Slack at that point. This leads them to way faster iteration testing cycles. The 100% of the non-technical team are already using it. So like the adoption was basically nothing, right? And as they commented, one example is the customer say the agent returned the wrong pricing. We generate tests, ask it to align config. The next day, the scenario was well passed. It's used by our managers daily. In this case, it was not even an engineer that fixed it. It was just a config on their platform, and that's it. And the problem solved itself. Then the other case that we have that is also very interesting is Freeday. So Freeday builds agents for finance and for customer support for a diverse set of companies, right? And then what's interesting that we realize here, but also across all the industries, how popular the role of forward deployed engineers is now, right? So in the old world, you use it to just build a SaaS and then you resell it to a bunch of companies because it's standardized, right? So the same process works for many of them. However, the power of agents is exactly that they are crazily adaptable, right? So they fill this gap where software doesn't, right? Which is a layer above. But exactly because of that, companies are so different, you need to adapt the agent to them. So then Freeday counts with quite a few forward deployed engineers. The forward deployed engineers, they go to the customer, they gather all the requirements, similar to what we showed earlier for this initial set of tests and scenarios. And what they're doing now is using LangWatch together with Cloud Code so that their forward deployed engineers can create those scenarios for onboarding a new customer and then already run it and already see if the configuration is going great. So this is the first iteration, and this already speeds up their onboarding crazy fast. So we estimate here like around 60% faster customer on board. And then after the first iteration, like I said, it's never perfect on the first try, right? So then there is a lot of also communication and testing back and forth with the client, and they come back with new feedbacks. And then again, the forward deploy engineer has to go back on this loop of creating the new scenarios for the new cases. But also there, what they used to do before was just testing manually. So it was a lot of work for changing configuration, testing manually, showing to the customer, changing again. And then sometimes it broke stuff that was already working before, right? So now they completely cut the regressions by doing it this way. And we estimate also here that they're saving up 80% less time on manual testing. Basically, like weeks that they would spend is now reduced to a day working for a customer, so then they can help more customers at once.
Yeah, and that's actually the figure we hear from all customers. So that really represents indeed what it's delivering for them, for customers using LangWatch scenario. So we've heard a couple of different roles, right? Engineers, forward deployed engineer, the domain expert, the product managers, and all of these names. In the end, it's coming back to wearing a hat. So whether you're the PM wearing a domain expert hat, or whether you're an engineer wearing actually the product manager hat, because I think those are coming more often nowadays as well, or whether you're an AI engineer. And all those three roles are coming into one standard. And this is what we're seeing from just an engineering team deploying agents towards a better process, having a better process of quality in place, where the domain expert, as we described before, defines what good look like, review the different edge cases when it happens in production, and can really judge those scenarios and judge what is happening in production. Then, depending what type of product manager you are, you can also be involved in defining those scenarios, right? But it also translates business goals into what those agent goals are, setting certain thresholds, but also KPIs and what needs to be that return on investment for this product to be successful. What can I see in view in the analytics? Is it performing well? Is it delivering the right results, etc., etc.? And then lastly, also on the technical side, these all three comes together. Theoretical, this is what it is. I think that the previous cases really showed what we're seeing back into actual production or in actual practicality. Yeah, I have the same issue right now. Into what happens in practice.
Yeah, exactly. And I think I really like the previous examples because they demonstrate the collaboration between all three, right? And we couldn't really share a screenshot of their Slack channel or their actual code on doing this, but we're going to demonstrate soon to you how they look like in practice. Also, collaborating and run how those scenarios on LangWatch look like. But yeah, let's continue.
And maybe, I think we're seeing this at current companies, right? But most companies we're working with are those AI native, AI first companies. But we're also getting the ask from lots of traditional SaaS or software businesses. Where do I even need to start, or larger mid-market enterprise? Where do I even need to start? I have my engineers working on something. It's in pilot phase, etc., etc. But what's next, right? And maybe I'm not going to answer this question because I rather ask questions in situations. So what would be your advice to where to start?
My advice to start.
Yeah.
That's a great question. Because we do, because indeed, to your point, enterprise. One thing that we see very common in enterprise now is that people are building these AI enablement teams to start fostering this exactly, right? To start defining a set of standards and high quality standards for agent quality. But I think the main thing that is missing from just traditional software development is, like I said, the higher collaboration from the domain expert. So my main advice to get started on this and actually bringing the quality to your agent is just start talking. It's just getting someone from the other team. For example, let's say your team is responsible for building an agent for finance or building an agent for HR, right? Bring somebody from that team into your team. Maybe somebody that has 10 years of experience in finance and put them close on the same room as the AI engineers, as the same room as the product manager, right? So that's the first step, to create this ownership, to make the person that is the actual owner of the evolves, right? Because it's the owner of the expertise and the quality, to be there collaborating with the team. And then, of course, the tools and the processes are just a facilitator of that. They will naturally look for those improvements in the team process, in the team tooling, to enable for finally having the complete cycle.
Yeah, and that's how we see most successful teams, at least, operating on agents. So let me. I think we kind of shared this process already. What do domain experts do before that launch? Write those test cases, label golden data sets. I think that one we didn't mention yet, right? Get that finance person into place. Let them generate a list of questions, or gather a list of questions, and let them already answer them. I think that's the first step, without going into scenario-based testing, already to define what evaluations need to be in place before that.
Yeah, I mean, of course, on this slide is kind of a catch-all advice, but it really depends case by case. So if your case has a golden, if it has a correct answer at the end of the day, then try to capture those, right? If you're answering deep technically customer support questions, you have an answer. If you're doing a marketing creative task, then maybe not necessarily. So it really depends. So take the mix and match the advice here to your own case.
Yeah, Exactly, and that's also sometimes where we come in place, right? Where our teams can help that define or think about, get you in a thinking process along the way during onboarding stage. But um, the, we talk a lot about before production, right? Before production, you need to have the scenario-based testing in place. You can use the previous described use cases or previous described tasks of a domain expert. But what do you do during production, during the evaluation, after the agent actually runs, right? What is your role as a domain expert or maybe as a PM to be involved the moment it's going live? And that still comes down, and we shared it right now, as in, okay, review those AI generated messages. Can I use this in the next scenario based testing? Can I use that? Do I need to flag certain things which is incorrect or which are correct, or can I actually change that expected output over there, which my domain or which my AI engineers then can use in the optimization process of the agents? So in terms of where you're involved into the process of building the AI agents, it's still both pre-production, but also in production, during the evaluation afterwards,
Yeah.
and approve the
One
evaluation.
point that I would just highlight here is the calibrate grader prompt trio examples. That's where the domain expert can really help. If you have already, if you are in production or early production and you already have a set of examples that they can classify as an initial human classifier, but not just labeling, but actually having their help to define those evaluators, right? So if the domain expert themselves can write the LLM as a judge on, so it means, I don't know, for example, you're trying to define the judge for rejection rates when the agent didn't understand, or when the agent was prescriptive, right? So you're in health, you cannot give prescriptive advice because you're not a doctor, you can just give facts. So if you can have a bunch of examples and then put it there, for example, on Language Workbench, you can easily do that they can create an LLM as judges themselves and run through across all those 50 conversations that you actually brought in production. Then you can see on each message how the judge evaluated, and then you can also read the reasoning. What was the judge thinking? So if you disagree, you can go there and adjust the judge. So if you're a domain expert for that area, I'd really recommend that you help the team also write this judge, because after this initial effort, then it scales so well, right? You have a judge that you agree with, that you can trust, and then you can put it to run to your millions of messages that are going from all your customers in production. This will be really powerful to get you a lot of signal on what is going wrong and what new tests and new scenarios you need to write, because now you also trust that judge. It's not just a random judge that you put there, right? He actually went through a bit of iteration there on the first week.
Precisely. Yes, that's a good point to highlight there. But then lastly, when are you ready? When can you launch that gate, right? And I think that's I think on the right side we see actually what our goal of sharing is today, and that is the goal of having a process in place where you define what that good looks like, you define who is being part of the team, know which scenarios or which edge case can never, or which scenarios actually can never fail, right? Know which failures could be acceptable. I think that's important to understand as well. But having that baseline, you can only improve from that moment. So have that goal, but also it's not per se a number, but have that goal and in place. And from there on, each time you launch something new, you know where you're gonna return back towards to.
Yeah. Again, it could be a number, depends on what you're building. Of course, some things are more easier to measure than others.
True.
But yeah, as long as you have like at this point we're comfortable, let's not regress from here, then yeah, you can only move forward.
Yeah, and finally, quality is a living system. I think that concludes the entire system here, and where launching is the beginning, not the end, and where you start from evaluating, simulating, even red teaming, perhaps in some stages, deploying, observing, and improving all along a way along.
Yeah, and I'm excited now to show how we can do that, is observe and improve, right?
Exactly, and that's what we're gonna share and show. So, for people who don't know about language, I think that's first and foremost the idea. So, this is a platform where you have the
Can you zoom
analytics
in? Sorry, can you zoom in just once?
just once,
Just
like this.
once. Yes. Okay.
Awesome, cool. Yeah, this is better readable, right? So, it's a platform to observe, evaluate your agents all along. So what I want to focus on today is scenario-based testing, which is in our way, it's under the evaluation topic, and which we call simulations, right? Because the goal of it is that we use a user simulator to test the entire agentic system by pretending it's an actual user using your system. What we can do is defining scenarios from the platform. What I'm going to show you today how to do it from Cloud Code. But to give you a sneak peek, scenarios from the platform, you described it a scenario like it will be here, give it a name, a situation, criteria, and then you run it against your agent. But for today, I'm going to show you to show how that works via a solution you might already use, whether that's Cursor, whether it's Cloud Code, whether that's ChatGPT, doesn't really matter. For this, we've created skills. And maybe Roger, you want to give a few thoughts on why we created skills while I'm opening the docs here. We, by the
Yeah.
way, have divided skills right now for PM and domain experts right here under skills, where you can see the different prompts over here. But yeah, give it a
Yeah,
give it
for
a
sure. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, thank you. So coding agents are now more powerful than ever, right? And if you're using something like Cloud Desktop, it can just execute things that were before only restricted to devs behind the scenes. And at LangWatch, we saw our onboarding changing completely. Before we would give people a code snippet they need to, send to their devs, and then they would look how to implement, copy and paste the code, integrate with their application and so on. But now those assistants are super powerful, right? So we completely changed it to just give people skills. Skills is instructions, basically, a set of instructions that you give to your agent so it can run anytime. So this can be just in the form of a big prompt, and that's why you have the copy full prompt button there, or a skill that you really install in your agent as you on the other skills for devs you can see. But now what we've been seeing is that a lot of our customers and PMs are using from very language and simulations from very different directions. So we just shared two examples, one from using from Cloud Code, the other one using from Slack even, right? And then what we want to show here is how can this be so powerful, because you can sum all the power of the language platform that is monitoring, that is observing your agent, that is running evaluations in production with the intelligence of Cloud, right? So where before you would analyze all this data, then you can combine now with your own data. For example, sending a PDF, right? And submitting something that creates a scenario specifically for you. So that's why we wanted to demonstrate it there, and how easy it is to get started now, where before you needed to talk to your dev team, now you can just do it for yourself.
Exactly. So right now I've set up the agent on the language platform. I've connected it to Cloud Code, and what I want to do today, I can ask how my agent is performing. I'm going to skip that one, but I can immediately go to create scenario test for my agents. So I'm going to copy the full prompt in this place, and then I am going to share a different screen. So with me, because I want to share.
While you share, just to explain the first one, maybe we can show later the how is my agent is performing. It will look at your traces and it will explore the last few days of data, and then it will give you a textual report and some links so you can see it in more details on language, of course, but it's a fast way to get a summary there.
Yeah, so in this way, we asked to create scenarios for the agent I connected to via an API key to Cloud Code, and it sees that the language MCP server is connected. And while I'm speaking, I'm also reading. That always works very well.
Oh
Do you
yeah,
want
so you
to?
didn't
Okay,
specify which
which
which agent that you have, but if you had the one before that, like how is my agent performing production, then it could actually see the real problems that are happening, right? And that's one of the powerful approach there as well. If you don't have that information, then of course you can define
Yeah,
everything.
so right now we chose the platform approach. So it is looking right now at the agents connected to the platform. So with that, it's gonna create scenarios, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, if you expand it there, then you see what's doing. It might be creating more than one. Yeah, so it's creating 4 scenarios.
Yeah, so in the
5.
meantime, five even. In the meantime, I'm already seeing them in the platform.
Can you
So
share
let
that
me.
again? You're still, yeah.
Yeah. Is this the right screen? Yeah, there we go. So I just shared this screen a couple of minutes ago, but here we see that those 5 scenarios have now been added. So a minute ago, we see that those scenarios are getting added and in. But now we actually want to test this against the agent we've been implemented. For this, I'm going to actually use this run plan because it's easier and better visually to show. For this, I'm going to run a new plan. I give it a name, first test, and then I'm going to choose the ones which we just saw, right? The error handling, frustrated or upset user, multi-turn flow, edge case. I can select a few more, but these for me are right now enough. Then I'm going to choose the infield agent, which is actually the agent connected, the project here, which is connected via an HTTP. We can also test these scenarios against just a prompt. In this case, we chose to test it the full agent because we want to know everything what's happening while it's running in a multi-turn conversation, as an example. Then I'm going to choose run it now, and I just need to click on one more button to run the 3 jobs at the same time. And then on the left side, you see also the earlier tests we've been running, or whether they passed or whether they succeeded. And as you can see, it's loading the first simulations, so the first conversations through here. And while it's running or while it's loading, the first results are coming in. And as an example, I'm gonna click already at one that failed as an example, and then we see that it got an error indeed. Oh, let's see it, the one that succeeded. So here we see that it met all the criteria in here. We can view the trace, but and most importantly, if this is a bad example, or at least it failed, then we can copy the trace ID and share that with the engineers for them to have a look at it. But I can also edit the scenario if I think, hey, there needs more criteria in here, or this criteria is actually not that important, or the situation changed. I can change the scenario from within here and save and run it again to see if the results are getting better here.
Yeah. And since this is just a conversation, right? Anyone can come here and literally read what happens. So this is perfect field for the domain expert to have those examples, those simulate examples, and then they can look at this green test, for example, and then they can be like, actually, that's not good enough, right? That's a false positive. I need to add more criteria. I need to adjust those, and vice versa, right? They can look at the red ones and they can be like, oh, that's actually that's okay. It's being too harsh, right? It's being too strict. Let's loosen up a little bit. But the point is, as long as you define, like we explained earlier, as long as you have at hand what are those critical things that must pass, and what are those critical things that can't fail for your agents, the edge cases and the corner cases, and you map them all as scenarios, then it's very easy to throw in an expert here and let them play with the agent and define that. So then the development team can know what to expect already.
Exactly. In the meantime, I was trying to find another case or example we've run in the past, but then I need to jump to a different project. So I'll leave it for now at this point, where you clearly have an overview of which scenarios have been passing and which haven't been succeeding.
Yeah, there are some questions on the chat. Maybe,
Awesome.
So folks, please, any questions that you have now, please throw them in the chat, because I see there is one by Amolo, and then Renan already replied. Thank you very much, Renan. But let me see if we have anything to add to that. So Amolo's question is, since AI operates probabilistically but users expect certainty, how do you design systems that align with human perception of quality? Yeah, that's a great point. And most of it is the process that we described here, right? And again, it depends on the industry you are and depends on the degree of certainty that you need. So if you have systems that are very, for example, very technical systems, how to operate large machinery, and then you need to consult the manual and the number of voltage really cannot fail, right? Then I would recommend you to have a lot of evals and really be strict about the reg that you're doing there. So for those cases, you can have a literal accuracy metric, right? You have like 100 examples, and then in all those, like, I don't know, 96 out of 100, it gets it right, and then 4% it gets it wrong. And then it depends on your business appetite or reasoning on how often it can be wrong. Maybe 96 is not enough, and you really need to get to that 100, right? But above that, there is a lot of things that are not, users don't necessarily expect certainty because they don't ask certain questions always the same way, right? So even if on a tool for the agent, you have the certainty of the correct voltage of the system that is being asked, the user can get to that question in any different kind of ways, in like 10 types of ways, right? So they can start the conversation in one way and then in another, or they can be misunderstood in the middle, or they can ask to talk to a human being. So there is a lot of paths that they can choose, and this is a more subjective, right? And what you want to do there, but still you want to improve the experience there. So the simulations really help you on all the behavioral, all the directions that your agent must do. And then for the smaller parts, you can have more traditional code doing the actual deterministic parts and just having the agent delegate there. And then on the simulations, you just verify that the agent correctly delegates when it should. I don't know if that helps. Then just let me read that written answer. Now, if you can measure what's human perception of quality, you can have a custom eval for that. Where I work, we have these subjective guidelines as X instead of Y. We have some evals measure how often the outputs are aligned with that. Yeah, that's perfect, Renan, because indeed, if you have a bunch of examples, then you can actually start to translating all the subjectiveness into more objective metrics, or at least a nice list of them. And like I said before, also, when you do the failure mode analysis, you start clustering and you start seeing some commonalities, some groups, and then the evals will just come naturally from that. Then there is a next one. Do you want to
I
take?
see that there is a Crew AI integration for language. So indeed, correct. Language is agent agnostic, so we work with all the different frameworks around there and are OTel native. How does it differ from the cloud-based observability that Crew AI provides, and can I combine language and their Crew AI cloud observability services? Well, I think what we're sharing today is the differentiation, right? Really, the testing, pre-production, in production, making sure that your agent behaves before you're entering production with simulations in there. So in that sense, that's the difference. Can you combine language and their Crew AI cloud observability service? Absolutely. If you have your observability already living there, then you can connect evaluations and scenarios towards language
Yeah.
or combine the two.
Yeah, so there is this standard in the industry called OpenTelemetry, right? And all observability tools, not all of them, but I mean, they should follow it. So there are a few ways that you can do it. You can send the traces both to language or Crew AI, or even combine, like say, use, for example, Crew AI for one, and then even use those traces to do the scenarios to test here on language side. Then the next one, hi, first session here, welcome.
Nice.
I've had built some simple applications using LangChain, a test papers checker for PDF and docs file. With LangChain, can I get emails, reports if I, let's say, deployed my LangChain as a pipeline and it crashed, or it didn't properly check some papers? Yes, so if I understand your question correctly, you want to know if you can get alerted should something wrong happen, right? So if it crashes in the middle. Yeah, so the traditional observability that we have in the language does just that for errors. That's easy, that's plug and play, you already get alerts. But on top of that, you might have more complex failure modes, right? Maybe the agent didn't fail, but it didn't understand the user question, right? Or it said I don't know, but in a very convoluted way. You can add evaluators. We call it online online evaluations, which can be an LLM as a judge, for example, looking at the messages that goes through your system. And then on those messages going through your system, yeah, like I have an online evaluation here running. Those messages that go through your system can then be evaluated by this judge in real time and alert you as well. Can generate metrics, and then it can alerts should something very weird pop up.
And you can get those get those mistakes via email, indeed.
Yes. Yeah. Also by email on Slack or
Very
wherever
good.
you are. Exactly.
All right.
Yeah.
Another question from Amolo. How do skills interact? Can they compose dynamically or are they orchestrated in a fixed pipeline? And another question is, are skills actually making agents more predictable or just giving us a better illusion of control over probabilistic systems?
Wow, that's a good one. Yeah, I
Yeah.
mean, I don't think the goal of so first of all, they can be composed dynamically because now the context window of agents is just very big, and it's like you can view skills as a big prompt, right? So I think it was never the intention of the skills to make the agent more predictable. It's basically the goal of skills is to basically give it a recipe to your agent from somebody else's expertise. So in language skills, what we encode a lot there is everything we said here, right? And all our learnings on how you should write those evaluations, how you should write those scenarios, what tools do you use to explore. So it's just a shortcut, a much faster way for you to check, for example, how my agents doing production and tell your agent what are the right things to look for. So skills are less for your own agent development, although they can be used that way, but more for your own work day to day, right? So you can have a skill that creates slides, you can have a skill that creates animations. And what we have for language is skills to improve your agent, right? That brings all this agent development life cycle that we've been learning a lot from the industry, from our clients, and that we've been teaching, like the webinars, and compacting into the skills. Does that answer the question?
Feel free to comment in there in the meantime.
Yes.
Awesome.
So Shravan asked, does language work with other OpenTelemetry such as Datadog, Grafana? And what is that the language does that other hotel tools can do already? Yeah, great question. So just like the similar question, but this is actually more common. So most of our enterprise customer already had like a Grafana in place, right? The main difference is that Grafana is mostly for more traditional software telemetry, right? Over distributed systems, for example. And it's awesome for that. So a lot of our customers combine like all that is happening on their microservices together with all that is happening on their agents. But under the hood is just the same. So under the hood, we have the same OpenTelemetry mechanisms. So you can also send your complete microservice telemetry to LangWatch. The main difference between those two is that our specialty is for agents, right? So for example, we group the messages in a nice way to read. So you see all the thread. You can take this thread and convert into a prompt and fully playground and test it quickly. We have a visualization of a sequence, so you can see sub-agents calling each other in a nicer way, and all data that you extract that are more LLM native data. So for example, number of tokens and the time to first token, right? So you know the speed where the user got there, literally the first word, the cost per token. So a lot of LLM native work, and plus, which the traditional tools don't do, doesn't make sense for them, is this online evaluation, which is something very valuable in the agent world. So to answer your question, most of our customers combine both.
Exactly. All right. I think we're wrapping up. Thank you for all the questions and the engagement here. And Thanks, Amole. I think to share with everyone, this is the first session you were looking forward to. So happy that it was helpful, and looking forward to answer any of your further questions once you're gonna start exploring language. And a final important question: will you in the future hold sessions over X? We've been doing that. We might gonna return to that in the future. Indeed. Thanks for
Yeah.
asking for it. It has been a while since we were active on X. Very happy this has been an engaged one. And with all the questions instead. If there are any further questions, feel free to reach out to us to the team. And let me see. Yeah, you can start for free at Language. Book a demo with us. And yeah, hope you enjoyed it. Thanks all for joining.
Thank you very much, everyone.